Okay. My guest today is Hannah Semmler, and I have to say, Hannah, whew, I'm so excited to have you here. I was just telling you this, I know, but like in the very beginning, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is FarmDrop because I'm such a huge fan and I think it's a genius and it really needs to spread. And so I'm thrilled that this has worked out because I want this across the country and I want you to be like so busy.
Well,
So, Hannah, thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you.
Good.
I've had a wonderful day. It's been kind of a crazy driving experience through the back roads of down East Maine with
The
flooded
fog.
no, it's huge floods across so I've been like driving through rivers to get to my meetings. But I'm now back home. Everything's calm, everything's well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Do you drive a truck? I picture
No,
you driving a truck. No?
I used to drive my grandmother's truck when I ran the gleaning initiative. And we ran that into the ground. I like to think because of all the vegetables we gleaned, it took a toll. No, I drive a Subaru.
That was my second guess. Okay.
Barley takes up the
Most.
entire back,
Yeah.
which is why he can't come with me on farm drop days.
Okay. Well, because it's full of vegetables. Okay. Well, so and if I mean I'm gonna do a little intro and so people will have they'll already have a little heads up, but so Hannah is the CEO of FarmDrop, and if you don't know about FarmDrop, Hannah's gonna tell us about that right now. But I'm a big fan. I utilize FarmDrop a lot, and I think it's awesome. I've already said that, but I think it's awesome. So
Amy,
Hannah,
you're both a vendor, as we call,
love it.
and a customer on farm drop, which is really exciting. And it's actually interesting because you sell on the Mid Coast farm drop, but you're a customer of the Lisbon farm drop. And
Yeah.
at some point, I'm going to turn this around, maybe not tonight, and interview you about what your experience is because you do all the ways in which one can do farm drop. So
Uh-huh. Funny.
um yeah, so what is farm drop? It's the heart of farm drop is about connecting farmers and their products year round to their neighbors, their community members, customers who want to have year round access to foods and all kinds of foods, meats and breads and prepared foods and vegetables, and maybe don't necessarily either it's a winter solution because there isn't a winter's farmers market, or it's a solution for folks who don't like going to the farmers market, but that also appreciate the fact that we can't 100% depend or rely on sort of industrial farms and national grocery chains for our foods. And so Farm Drop tries to make it easy for there to be a lot of great product variety, foods from within mostly 25 miles, but maybe 65 miles, and make the connection for farmers to be able to post what they have available each week, set their pricing, set their descriptions and their images, build their store out alongside all of these different other farms and food producers to bring to customers every week everything that they have already been paid for, so there's no waste, and create a sort of bountiful, choice-filled experience for customers who want to always get those bagels and always get that bread and always get that, um, prepared food or vegetables, and then also experiment with the rest of their cart.
Hmm.
Um, Usually customers check out with about $100 worth of product in their cart, which is a pretty big average cart size. And farmers can make between $500 and $100,000 in a year on farm drop, depending on just the kind of products that they offer and the size farm that they are.
Yeah. It's very cool. I try to explain it to people and have I do a really bad job of it, sadly. But I mean I think of it as sort of like an Amazon or I guess more like a Hannaford to go type of thing. Like you can order all the things that you want, but it's for farmers. So you're getting it locally. Um, and I love that there's so much creativity in it. Uh, and I love that you're just giving it back to your neighbors. I think that's so cool. And I mean, and in your emails regularly, you're talking about community and like, giving to your community and sharing and also, building relationships, which is so important to me. And I know as a vendor myself, I mean, my jams would never make it to Washington, Maine. I don't even know where Washington, Maine is, but my jam has made it to Washington, Maine.
Yeah, that is cool. It's a way to get, well, so that speaks to sort of the power of FarmDrop is that a lot of times you can get products on FarmDrop that you cannot get at your local co-op or that particular producer of your favorite goat's milk yogurt or bagels doesn't distribute to your general store or doesn't go to your local farmers market. And still they're within 30 miles of your home. That to me is a connection that needs to be made if there's a desire on both parts, A, to sell, and B, to access that product. And FarmDrop can make it a lot easier. Then that's the kind of connection that we want to make. Where it reduces the driving on both ends from farm to table. And then also increases the collaboration amongst the different producers. So we would not be able to run FarmDrop if it weren't for farmers being willing to work with each other to get the product from point A to point B to point C to point D. So all of the driving is done by farmers on FarmDrop.
That's so impressive. I would love to see a map of like how that's done, like who does what. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and what that does is it maintains the farmers in control of their marketing platform, their sales, and their distribution. Whereas in most other systems, they're only really able to say that when they're at a farmer's market.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really know what happened to their product at a farm stand or a farmer's market, or a direct sale. And so FarmDrop retains that direct sale model, but says we'll take it the last mile, like drive less, farm more, right? We wish we could offer a full distribution model, but if we did that, the economics of it would mean that we'd have to become a wholesaler. And even wholesalers don't necessarily pick up at farms unless it's like big volumes, right?
Right. Sure.
So instead, we're saying, well, what if we build collaboration for the distribution and logistics? So you're never just driving your own product, or maybe you are if that's what you want to do. But you can piggyback on different farmers that are going different routes. And we're still trying to figure out that collaboration and how it works, who pays who pays for that. Is it a FarmDrop service? Is it just sort of DIY collaborative logistics? But it's a really important piece to making it so that FarmDrop can charge 10% of sales and just take care of the tech and the marketing. The farmers are really the ones doing the sales because they're the ones putting the product up and sort of showcasing it to customers and pricing it, and discounting it, and coming up with bulk deals and whatnot. And then they're also driving it to the hubs that we've strategically located. And then our local managers are the ones that are getting paid by customers with a pickup fee. So $5, $7.50, in some places it's $10. So that we can have those local community members, maybe it's a farmer, maybe it's a nonprofit, do the sort of distribution that includes pickup locations and home deliveries. So it's this big sort of like family approach to getting food to people, getting farmers their best price. 90% of the listed price goes directly to farms, getting community organizations basically paying for community organizing, local food coordinators, if you will, and then retaining a little bit for us to continue in the sort of innovations and research and development. And we have a lot of things that we want to do with the technology. So we have to continuously figure out a balance between that revenue and grants and fundraising.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I love how it's sort of organic, and it's almost like family oriented, how, like, you help me, I'll help you, and I'm heading that way anyway, why don't I just grab this or whatever. um I love that. And it's like, I don't know, I just love it. It just feels like family.
It is, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've started bringing coffee to our Wednesday distribution on Wednesdays and in Blue Hill. And that has like changed the dynamic to where it's less of sort of like everybody just arriving and getting their job done and leaving. It sort of invites people to sort of take a moment and pour themselves a cup of coffee and turn to the farmer next to them and have a chat. Or if we're waiting for one of the farmers before everybody can leave to distribute all the product. And it's interesting. So I want to really focus on, the connection between the customers and the farmers and the producers is sort of, it's digital, right? You don't think of like an online solution as something that brings connection, but it's less about like the direct connection between the individual customer and the individual farmer, and more like, what system are you connected to when you're spending your dollars on this platform? And the system that you're connecting to is a system of farmer to farmer collaboration, really wanting to get their fresh, locally made quality product directly to customer, and both the farmers and the customers trusting FarmDrop to just make that last bit of the connection. And so it is about connectivity. And can be a debate about whether, I don't like the comparison to Amazon, because we're actually doing the one thing that Amazon cannot do, which is ship a lettuce from your local farmer to you.
Right.
They can't do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And so it's exactly what we want to do, is meet customers where they are. And also, there's an entire group of people that don't drive that should be able to access local food without asking for a favor. They just go on to FarmDrop, they order, they get a delivery. There are, ways in which we can build in just so much more to making it so that farms can manage their entire crop on FarmDrop. They can put it up for retail. They can decide if they want 20% of their crop to be listed with wholesale price available for restaurants or general stores. They could add stuff for discount wholesale for food pantries or meal sites to claim. I would love it if our local food pantry could just go on to FarmDrop and shop for discounted wholesale. I mean,
That would be so cool. I mean, I love that there's a wholesale option on FarmDrop. Like, you can buy it in bulk.
There's bulk, and then
Goat
there's
cheese.
also, if we assign you a wholesale buyer customer role, you are then able to see wholesale prices for everything on there. So there's bulk, which is available to everybody, and then there's wholesale, which is specific to, Brooklyn General Store or Brooklyn Inn or
like
whoever.
Flux restaurant. Oh, okay.
That's how they can order online through FarmDrop if they want to
Gotcha.
participate and sort of like order by Monday, receive it Wednesday.
Oh, that's cool.
No minimums, because usually we're already going to those locations with pickups for customers.
Got it. That's cool. I mean, my reason for saying Amazon is just that you're like choosing from different stores. Like all the different vendors, you can choose from whoever you want, and you're paying for it separately, but then it's all coming together at the same place.
Mhm.
That was my point for that. But I love the idea of the farmers working together to get their product to the customer. There's just so much to it. I'm so impressed with how organized you guys are to be able to make that happen. Honestly, there are so many things to that. I never really thought about it until we had that meeting a couple weeks ago, and you
Yeah.
were like, "So who is able to drive from wherever to wherever?" And you just have it all in your head, like the routes and who's available when. And I was like,
Well, it's interesting because in spring of 2022, in spring of 2020, I was in Tucson, and FarmDrop was something that I think my co-founder was holding more actively, just sort of in like the business administration side of things. And I didn't know the names of all the farmers, and I didn't know the names of all the pickup locations, and I really didn't know exactly how each hub operated. And at that time, we were thinking that we would be, replicating the FarmDrop basic technology stack to communities and having them take it in the direction that they needed to customize it, but then in that scenario, they would have to find their own tech team. And
right,
as we found out, that is no joke. To find a tech team, to fund a tech team, it is a lot of work, and it's expensive, and it's a lot of trial and error, and you can spend a lot of money on some feature that you thought you needed that then turns out to be totally irrelevant to the direction of your business. And so it was quickly determined that that was actually not going to be viable. Open Food Network is an example of an open source system that does do that really well, but they're very organized internationally with different systems for that to work. And we didn't want to do that. And so then we put all of the different hubs in Blue Hill and Deer Isle and MDI and Lisbon and Portland and Unity onto the same database and started to build it more as a network, and thought, okay, actually, we don't want it to be independent technology stuff. We want it to be so that we can build connections between these different communities. So then I spent a year negotiating the politics of who was allowed to sell where. And I came from the perspective of, trying to honor the, closer relationships and trying to make sure that the farmers that were closest to the customers were
right,
on there. But it turns out that's kind of redundant. Those same farmers are selling at the farmers market. Those same farmers are selling at the co-op. Those farmers, for the most part, if you want to get to their farm stand, you can drive to them. What's unique about FarmDrop is actually the ability to get products in from Unity or get products in from MDI and make it possible for there to be greater connection to larger number of producers and build more product variety for customers, so that the customer that finds local food shopping limiting because they only see what they see at the farmers market gets blown away when they go into FarmDrop Blue Hill and see 740 products
right.
available, 35 different farms, the majority of which are within 25 miles, but 25% are within 65. It's still Maine. We're doing good, right?
Yeah.
And it's exciting. And it's something that just we want to bring to more communities, but we've also learned that it takes a lot of management to sort of manage the relationships, figure out the logistics, constantly be figuring out, how to get from here. And I am not entirely sure at this point that the single hub is the thing to replicate. I believe that what we're building in Down East Maine and what we're trying to replicate in Central Maine is this idea of a cluster of hubs. So 2, 3, or 4 different hubs and hub managers that want to work together with the same 35 different producers and 700 plus products to create a sort of hub of hubs and get product out to, I guess we have 12 different pickup locations and 3 different packing centers.
Oh my
But all
gosh.
the product goes through one of these locations. And so now we're at this point of like, okay, let's build the infrastructure for that one location that is serving these other connected sister hubs so that we can build more capacity to get more of this product out, market, and really operationally like meet the demand. Because there's a surprising number of people who are dissatisfied with the combination of options of grocery shopping in their community. They don't love the stores. They don't love, you know, the limited product variety in some cases, and they're looking for something different, and FarmDrop's trying to give them that while still beneficially impacting sort of the hyper local and the regional local Maine food economy.
Yeah. I mean, I've totally seen on the, I think the Unity FarmDrop, the delicious cookies and donuts and thought, how do I get that?
Yeah. And then on the other hand, like I don't necessarily, from an emotional standpoint, I don't necessarily want it to be that you get, I mean, I don't think it necessarily would ever be able to be that you get all the products, the same products on all the hubs. Like I love that, you know, Backstage Farm is a small market garden that would probably not have enough product variety to send to Lisbon.
The whole state.
Yeah. Tenderheart Bakery doesn't have big, you know, takeover expansion plans. Like there are other bakers in Midcoast, like Hootenanny, who we want to help build up their business. And so there's this sort of natural well, I'd say sort of like limit to how cookie cutter we can become, which is what I love about it, is that all of the FarmDrops are slightly different. And yet there are some producers that sell on all the FarmDrops. And that is kind of everybody's, well, some producers' goals. And if it's some producers' goals, we definitely want to help those farmers meet those goals. But it's an interesting
pizza. Get the pizza, the goat cheese, and the yogurt.
Abrams
and the chicken sausage.
Yep. No, it's great. And then there's a lot of, it's interesting because the farmers that sell the most are also the farmers that help the most with logistics in some cases. So it all sort of works out in terms of the reinvesting in the system. But yeah, we are definitely making it up as we go, but we're getting organized, and hopefully we'll start to sustain, you know, more than part-time independent contractor jobs and actually build a sort of core team of 4 or 5 that are really running this full time so that we can sort of deliver on the quality and on the promise to farmers to become just more recognized in the communities where we are operating.
That's so cool. I love it. And so there's so much more to you. I know, because I've been stalking maybe a little. But so I know that you had a podcast, and it's kind of on hiatus right now, but you've got other projects that you're working on. And your podcast was it What is American Food? Is that what it was called?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so What is American Food is a podcast that I started with my co-host and author Ali Burlow, who's based in Vermont. And at the time it was the beginning of COVID, and I was in Nogales, Arizona, working with Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona on their produce rescue work. So previous to FarmDrop, I was working on food waste prevention. So I studied international food business. I focused my master's thesis on food waste in 2011. I worked for the Spanish government doing different case studies, trying to sort of spread the good word of food waste prevention across different industries. I focused on restaurants and retail, and I had this sort of calling to go back to figuring out surplus on farms, because while at College of the Atlantic, I'd been in Guatemala and I'd been going to my interviews about sort of historical topics, but I kept walking by these fields of unharvested carrots, hybrid carrots. And it turns out that there'd been a guy with a megaphone every year that goes out and sort of tells the farmers what the crop of the year is going to be. And that year they just sold them on carrots, that there was going to be a huge market for carrots. Of course, the market flooded. The US said they didn't need any more carrots. And so they'd go down day after day to like try to sell the carrots down at the market. Huge trucks coming through, filling up. I mean, this is the biggest market. We're not just talking like, this is a huge exchange market in Guatemala, headed for Mexico and the US. And there was no market for the carrots. So they were left unharvested. Nobody wanted to eat those carrots locally. So these fields that had been the breadbasket of Guatemala sort of went to producing an export crop that nobody wanted. So I was in Spain and I was like, I got to get back to sort of like that food loss on farms. And so I took a job with Healthy Acadia in 2013, and I started working on developing what was the first paid gleaning coordinator job in the state of Maine. The Cooperative Extension had been doing gleaning for years. And the Cooperative Extension in Ellsworth and the Hancock County Food Security Organization decided they needed a full-time gleaner. So I took that job and I came and worked for 5 years to develop that position, which is now a stable, fully funded position at Healthy Acadia. And we established the Maine Gleaning Network, which was now 10 organizations that work in different regions statewide to do the gleaning in their communities. And then we did the 5,000 event in Portland to prove to Maine that food waste was in fact a problem, that surplus was in fact real, and that we needed to do something about it. Most people didn't believe that we could harvest enough food to feed 5,000 people. And of course, within 3 days, I gleaned my way from Blue Hill down to Portland, finished up at Jordan's farm in Cape Elizabeth, and had way more food than we needed. We had like 5,000 pounds of fresh produce that we were going to be cooking into a soup. And it is actually really exciting to see all the people that were involved in that event. Good Shepherd Food Bank, Jordan's Farm, which has now started the Farms for Food Equity work. Many of the farmers, the larger farmers in the state of Maine, Circle Bee Farms is sending broccoli down to Allen's Blueberries to get processed. Good Shepherd Food Bank has a processing facility. Like, there is an awakening since I was doing this work of the amount of fresh produce right in the state of Maine that is underutilized, that needs different levels of processing and different levels of distribution solutions. And so that work is really, really exciting to me. But when I was in Nogales, I'd been hired to do large scale produce rescue program development. We developed a repack program to hire mostly women at risk that were looking for jobs, and provided them with higher paying jobs than what they could find in the industry to pack produce boxes for food banks around the country, with 50 million pounds of fresh produce over the course of an entire growing season, which is the Mexico growing season. And so I just could not believe that back in Maine, I was saying, hey guys, we have truckloads of sweet peppers and tomatoes and, all of the produce that isn't available in Maine in the winter. And we have funders that want to send trucks your way. And, these things can be pre-bagged and retail ready, and we'll just give them out to food pantries. And I tried to activate the Maine Gleaning Network. And what I found was this sort of, well, we want to support Maine farms. And I was like, well, but Maine farms mostly have large amounts of potatoes right now. And people need to
can't get those in the winter.
More than just potatoes. And and so then it just dawned on me that I was like, okay, I just think that there's this almost like and I am 100% dedicated to local and regional food systems because that's what I believe in. And the Blue Hill Co-op would not be able to open its doors, and it would not be able to hire people year round if it weren't for produce from Mexico. So we have to tell the whole story. And we can't just tell customers that they just need to focus on, what's local, what's seasonal, because they walk into the co-op and there's many sweet peppers on the shelves. And why would they deprive themselves of that source of vitamins? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's there, it's been transported, it's been produced in many cases by incredible businesses. I actually know a lot of these businesses now in Mexico, and Wilson's Produce, Covilli, they do incredible work. They are, on the sort of organic regenerative agriculture side of things. And they're trying to feed people in Mexico and people in the US, and they're an important resource for all of us. And so that podcast, What is American Food, was meant to sort of try to tell the story that I was learning about at the time, of coexisting food systems and how to understand them as generally good, but needing checks and balances, and in particular, balance, right? So if we're coexisting food systems, we should be able to primarily support the farms within our area and our region when the crops that they're growing are in season, and like, it should all get bought up and it should all get eaten and it should get shared with the community at large.
Right.
Those that maybe are experiencing hardship that can't afford it should still have access to it. And Good Shepherd Food Bank does incredible work. Tree of Life food pantries, all of these organizations are trying to do that. The gleaning work is part of that. But when those products are no longer available and the best place to grow a tomato is Mexico, some might say it's hydroponics in Maine. I think it's debatable. I don't know if anybody's
sunshine.
Where's the sunshine? It's originally a Latin American fruit.
Yeah.
Where does, a tomato have a right to grow? And is it in soil, or is it in hydroponic systems? Is it corporate? Is it small independent farmers that are trying to make a living in Mexico? Like, how do we choose, right? And so that was the conversation I was trying to start with. What is American food? And it's in particular, making a reference to American food, not United States of America food. American food includes the entire American continent, which of course includes Canada and Mexico and Latin America. And so I think it's a really interesting question, because we eat avocados in the winter. Some people eat mangoes, some people eat oranges. And that means we need to look at the entire American food system to understand how we want to eat. And that is the question that Farm is posing. And we're trying to do it with the least amount of, judgment and the least amount of barriers to say, we have coffee on our site, we have chocolate on our site. We have olive oil from Sicily on our site. And I remember being in Germany and organizing a buying club to get citrus from Sicily up into Germany. It's the same thing. Like, we might need to do that. FarmDrop might want to do that. And I'm just waiting for our customers to ask. They want greens in the winter, that I know. Want oranges? We'll find a really close.
I want oranges.
People, right? I mean, it's interesting. And it's not necessarily the first thing that people think of when they think about FarmDrop, but I just think that there's an opportunity to have a lot of fun and feel really good about each individual farming system that we're supporting through FarmDrop.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they're right down the yard, down, the road or in our backyard necessarily.
I mean, ideally that would be great, but I mean,
why would it be great?
Well, because local food is healthier, right? Because it hasn't been picked before it's ripe, or it's been however that wording goes, like it hasn't been picked before it was ripe. because it hasn't been trucked across the country or whatever. Like it's picked fresh or whatever. I mean, I
No,
think
if we're comparing apples to apples,
right,
for sure. But
right.
if comparing things that just don't grow here,
Absolutely.
I think
No,
it's exciting
absolutely.
to taste things from away.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we literally can't grow citrus here in Maine. And citrus is so good for us, especially in the winter, like vitamin C, and it just tastes good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been ordering from a company in Florida every winter, and the last 2 winters I've gotten moldy fruit and I've still had to pay for it. I'm like, I need a better situation.
Exactly. So if we could work directly with farmers, also there are, if you're interested in Black farmers' rights and their ability to access markets, there are pecan grower cooperatives. And sorry, I grew up in Spain, so I pronounce things strangely sometimes.
I just don't usually say them, Hannah, because I'm afraid to offend anyone. People are like, how do you say that? I'm like, I don't.
Pecan or pecan. But yeah, so I think it's interesting to think about not so much where are we located, but what are the systems that we want to support. And that's one of the things that I am trying to create the best possible system with FarmDrop to
Right.
support farmers connecting with customers. And I
Right.
want the system to be fair, and I want it to be efficient. I want it to be easy. I would love to have, electric vehicles going around and picking up the food from farms and just
Right.
having the farmers never have to leave the farm if they don't want to. But at the moment, we're doing it through collaboration, and I think we've come a long way. I think it's working.
It
Um,
seems pretty smooth.
yeah, just last week we did, $20,000 of sales in a week, which to us is pretty big. It was 200 customers spending about $100 an order across all 5 of our hubs. Some of them 100 orders, some of them 10. So we have a lot of room to grow with the infrastructure that we have.
Mhm.
And I think we could reach 500 orders in a week. Um, and that would mean, $2.5 million invested in the local food economy in the year.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the cool thing about FarmDrop is you can choose whoever you want to support. Like you can order, you can have citrus available, and if people don't want to order from that far away, or pecans, however you want to say it, if you don't want to order from that far away, or if you don't want to support Black farmers, or whatever, you don't have to order from them. You can order from down the street if you prefer. You have
Yeah.
that choice. But it's great to have the options and to have the option to support other farmers. Like there's the farmer in Kansas or something that grows a crap ton of sweet potatoes. I want the sweet potatoes.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that is an option. So the What is American Food podcast is just trying to bring light to the stories, in particular of the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. And then we started working with Red Tomato. And then my host, unfortunately, co-host got quite sick. And so I just couldn't do it without her. I just was missing that co-host, co-writer energy, and I tried to get another episode in, but I struggled, so it's been on pause. And instead, I've been working with a filmmaker, and doing film, which has been really fun. And another way to be really involved in sort of storytelling. And I think it's been a great way to engage that sort of missing piece, which might be the connection or the storytelling between the farmer and the customer that may or may not happen at a farm stand or at the farmer's market. Well, it's sort of the idea of, well, let's actually bring an even deeper connection through putting together these 2.5 to 5 minute films, It's all crowdsourced. We have a Patreon link website where you can become a $3, $5, $50 member. And all of that funding goes towards sort of doing more filming and more editing of films that help to bring the stories of the local farms that are in particular on FarmDrop out to share with customers and community members. And it's also an interesting way to build community events. So I've been doing screenings in different communities, mostly around here at the moment, because we did 3 films, one of Tinder Hearth Bakery, Quills End Farm, and 44 North recently, that had sort of like a different quality than the first few that we did. They were less FarmDrop promotional and more really getting at the heart of why these folks are doing what they're doing. And I thought that was really interesting. And our goal for 2024 is to do films that a little bit get deeper into how certain aspects of farming work. Like, how do you preserve apple varieties, right? How do you extend the season of greens into the winter? Start to get at some of the questions that I think farmers, but customers too, sort of wonder and are interested in beyond just sort of the feel good inspirational story, which is what we've been focused on this year.
Oh, I love that. And I love that. I mean, I love the podcast. The super deep look into the origins of food and you know where it's all coming from. I thought that was really beautiful. But I also love that you're focusing on home right now. I think that's really fun. And Tinderhearth is your brother, is that correct?
No, Tim Semmler is my cousin. Tim and
Your
Lydia.
cousin. Oh, okay, sorry. But that's really fun. That was a fun story to learn about. But just to it I think it's a great connector, like you're saying, you know, to see these short videos and say, oh wow, so these are the people that make the bread or the make, you know, they grow the little animals or whatever. And they can say, oh, that they're the ones that have the video and I want to support them because look at what all the great things that they're doing. I think that's super cool. So
Yeah, I
good
love
for
that. I
you.
love hearing the stories. Yeah, and then yes, I still do a little bit of work with the Southwest, sort of organizing around produce rescue at the border. It's sort of like once you know how much food is being left at the border, on the one hand, it makes you want to rescue it and figure out how to share it. On the other hand, it makes you want to just focus on local regional food systems because there's plenty of surplus in those food systems as well. But I got invited to go along with the COO of the community food bank at the time, Dana Yost, who I still work with. And we went into a warehouse where, as far as you can see, cantaloupe melons. It reminded me of when I was in Guatemala and it was just as far as I could see carrots lying on the ground.
Oh,
Like the horizon wasn't long enough for me to understand how many
oh my gosh.
rooms there were filled with cantaloupe melon. And they were like, take as much as we want, we can't sell any of it. And we're talking about like stacks up to the ceiling,
Oh,
mile long
oh,
warehouses. You
oh,
just, once you know, I just can't let that go. And so
right.
I'm 90% focused on FarmDrop, and I would say I'm 10% focused on figuring out if there's a way to stop the sort of hemorrhaging of food at the border.
Mm.
And at the very least, figure out ways to rescue it and get it to people who would enjoy that food. And the food banks that are equipped with structure or possibly the processing facilities that have the ability to turn that food into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, all of those connections need to be made. But I truly believe that small scale farmers, food banks, large scale farmers. And I was just having this conversation and have been having this conversation for 3 years now with the former CEO of Cisco Foods and the former CEO of Relay Foods, Zach Buckner and Rick Schneiders. And we need a digital solution to help us communicate about what food is available, where, and when. And I've been saying this for years. And we need these different communication solutions, inventory management, supply chain management, e-commerce, the whole spectrum of to be connected to each other. We can't continue to work within the four walls of our own business without being able to just like open the availability to new partners. And we saw this during COVID when food service and retail weren't talking to each other. That meant, 40% of our food was just stuck. And yeah. And there's a solution out there that I think is going to be really powerful when it starts to get utilized. So I think, FarmDrop is just a small way to bring digital solutions down to sort of like the small scale farms and food producers and in rural areas. And, I think that hopefully we will be able to, at the right time, connect our solution up with other solutions that democratize access to the digital tools that we need to be able to be in communication about food in such a way where we stop overproducing and we start specializing on like what exactly we do need to produce in order for there to be that sort of coexisting food systems model that is balanced, where the things that need to be produced where they're being produced are being produced in the right quantities, and that's it. And then we're letting the earth sort of like regenerate without having to do much other than not like over produce and then have warehouses of product or fields of product sort of. So in a way, FarmDrop is not sort of the most straight shot solution to food waste prevention that I've ever been involved with. I've done a lot of other things that are sort of more direct food rescue. But what I love about FarmDrop is that it prevents waste and that everything that we're doing in the design of the system is zero waste when it comes to food. We're still working on packaging, which is hard. But farmers only harvest and bring to FarmDrop what they've already sold. They're not turning around and packing up their truck after a farmer's market where it was a rainy day and they didn't sell a lot. They're not taking stuff to sit on a shelf and then going back to restock and finding those same products still on the shelves. Right. They're able to harvest to order, make to order. And that is, to me, the best thing that I can do at this point to contribute to a system that is not wasting food.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just keep thinking about all those cantaloupe.
It's pretty scary.
That's
yeah.
insane. Oh, it's so sad.
Well, and the worst thing is that after a food bank has come and taken what, like 5% of it or 10% of it, there are only two things that they can do: send it back to Mexico and try to sell it there, or dump it in the landfill. And that's the entire environmental crisis that we're trying to avoid, is the methane produced by product and food being discarded into landfills all over the world. So yeah, it's a huge problem. But having been focused on FarmDrop for the last 2 years and being in Maine, it's been really, really beautiful to get to know all of the farms and all of the pickup locations and all of the hubs and the hub managers. And we've been working hard to sort of redesign and rethink sort of the way in which the network needs to move forward. And we're constantly evolving and changing and adapting. I think probably too much so for some, but it's fun and I love it. I really love FarmDrop.
Yeah.
It's
well, I sure love the emails that I get every week. I feel really connected to you. They're like very personal emails and not just like, hey, your thing is open. I mean, I get an email and I'm just like, hey, there's Hannah. That's Hannah.
Thank you. Well, and I have to say, shout out to Sam. And Sam was an intern through Innovate Maine that we hired, and she takes sort of my, you know,
Oh, so it wasn't Hannah.
oh, it is.
Oh,
It is.
okay.
No, it is. Sometimes I would say. But it's also Sam does a good job of cleaning it up and shortening it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can write.
I like words.
Yep. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for all that you do with that. My gosh. It's and is there still a farm drop in New York? Was it Western New York? And there's one in
Yeah.
and
So
in Arizona?
they actually just closed for the winter. We hope to reopen. Tucson closed also. And I would say we've opened 17 different farm drops across Maine and Western New York and Tucson. But I think that we're sort of in this retracting mode, to where we're actually, instead of expanding sort of geographically, we're trying to hone in on, what is the down east Maine model that needs to be here for years and years and years to come? And what is the central Maine model? And once we've figured that out, what do we need to do in southern Maine? And then we will have 3 clusters of maybe 10 to 12 hubs with 50 pickup locations or more. And we can say, hey, Michigan, you should implement the farm drop model to bring in $10 million to your local food economy. Hey, New York, you're missing this whole part of the connection between communities and across regions. And like, here's the farm drop model. So that I personally don't think that it's my job to leave community food systems everywhere. I think that my job is to create a system that works for Maine.
Right. Right, exactly. So you focus on Maine and making Maine a well-oiled machine, and then other states hopefully will see it and say, how can we replicate that?
Yeah. And then we engage in a different kind of relationship to help them develop it, but it's not under our management, because the whole point is that the technology system can be built and perfected and packaged in a way that can be downloaded and used. But it's the local knowledge and the local way and the regional systems and the realities of those places that are going to need to fill in the gap, shape the, it's not a build it and they will come. It's, here's a tool to make it possible for you to sort of reach your goals with what it is that you're.
You don't want someone from Maine managing anything in Michigan or whatever. Like, you don't know the
Well,
farmers.
no, not that. It's that, like, I wasn't able to appropriately manage a Tucson farm drop or a Western New York farm drop. I fell short of being able to be equitable with spending as much energy on New York as I was in Maine, and that was felt. And there was not a Hannah in Western New York. Incredible people, but there wasn't that founder, I'll do anything for my baby and like drive crazy distances. Like, they have lives that are busy and children of their own, and they can't put that energy towards it. And so in that way, farm drop is not yet sustainable because it's reliant on the amount of energy that I'm willing to give it that is unpaid. And one could argue that aspects of the collaborative logistics system are also unsustainable because farmers aren't accounting truly for the costs of what it takes them to fill their orders and get their products to market. And they're not doing that for the farmer's market either,
Right.
but they may not be doing it for FarmDrop. And so when you actually start to try to pay someone to do that job, it could be that FarmDrop operates based on will and love,
Right.
which
A
is
lot of
fine,
volunteer work.
which is fine as long as people want to do that.
Right.
But there are limits to what you can do with that.
Sure.
And so we're just continuing to ask the question, is it, does a community market hub want to fill 100 orders, or are they cool with 20? Do, you know, does a community market hub want to deal with 750 SKUs, or might they be fine with like, if there aren't business driven decisions because we're operating based on a partially volunteer model, we're sort of we're a hybrid, and we are a hybrid. We're an L3C, which by definition is neither a nonprofit or for profit. We're neither a business nor a volunteer. We employ you, but sort of gig economy. We're, independent contractor, you're hourly. We don't have any benefits. Like, you drive product in your own car. There's no FarmDrop van. We borrow spaces. We don't rent. We don't have any of our own infrastructure. Like, what are we?
I mean, it's just a few hours a week, right?
It's like one day a week, Wednesdays in Down East, Fridays in Central Maine. And
Yeah.
what's special about it is that people want to do it. And people want to do it because they don't like the other options as much. And they believe in the vision.
I was going to say, because they believe in FarmDrop and the
There's
mission.
there's a lot of there's a lot of there's a lot of like elf spirit in FarmDrop. We're all just kind of elves, like, and so yeah, well, sing loud and clear for all to hear.
Amen.
But yeah, we'll see. And I think the big question will be if layering small scale wholesale into FarmDrop and figuring out the right scaled infrastructure for these hubs could be solar sheds that pop down in a certain place and build sort of like an extended walk-in. It costs $25,000 and you get a big grant and you build 10 of them, and then you're off to the races. Like, there could, it's okay to do it any way that it needs to be done, as long as it gets done, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
yeah. Oh my gosh.
thank you, Amy.
Wow. So Hannah, when I say the word sustainability, I know you have lots of thoughts on that, but what does that mean to you?
To give the option to the next generation to be able to continue it.
Okay. That works. Yeah. And then how can people find or follow you or find FarmDrop and learn more about that?
Yeah, so our website is www.farmdrop.us. Our Instagram is at FarmDropUS. We have a Patreon page and a Vimeo page. We're on Facebook. And just go on to FarmDrop and click our locations and put in your zip code and find your pickup location and create an account and start shopping.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if you want to be engaged, if you want to get paid to volunteer, and drive or pack orders or help run senior food fund programs, or are a nonprofit and you want to have a donations page on our FarmDrop hub, or you want to host a pickup location, or you're a farmer or you make something and you want to sell it, or you have any questions at all, please get in touch. My email is hannah@farmdrop.us, Hannah with an H at the end. And if you can't remember that for some reason, info@farmdrop.us. And I answer the phone. I call my customers if they're having trouble, and we email back as soon as possible. So we hope to find you. And thank you, Amy, for hosting me and FarmDrop on your incredible podcast.
Yay. I'm so happy. Yay. Thank you so much. I'm going to put all the stuff in the show notes so that people don't have to remember it. But thank you so much, Hannah. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for all that you do with FarmDrop and the food rescue and the filming, and just thanks for being you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the shout outs I get from you online and stuff. It's really great. Support is well received.